So President Biden has finally signed this major bill. This is a massive bill. This bill right here is going to have major implications on us here in the United States. It's going to impact the American people in the future, and it's going to impact other countries as well. Now, I'm going to explain what this bill is. I will explain why this is such a big deal. Good news is this was a bipartisan bill, which means it passed with Republican and Democratic support in Congress, and then President Biden finally signed it. He signed it last night. Now, today's video, I'll explain what this bill is and why this is such a big deal for the American people and people abroad. So again, I just want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy these daily updates, do me a favor. It takes just 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button, and let's begin. So first off, what is this major bill? Well, it's actually the government funding bill. President Biden signs the bill to fund the government into 2024 and averting a shutdown. Now, you probably heard this before. I've talked about this. I said on Tuesday when the House of Representatives passed this bill that this bill was going to pass. It was going to pass before the deadline of today, Friday, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, I knew this was going to pass. It wasn't a big deal. But why am I saying it's a big deal now? It's a big deal now because President Biden made it very clear. He accepted the deal that Republicans put on the table. Just to give you an idea, the House of Representatives passed this bill on Tuesday, and it with a vote of 336 to 95. 93 of those that said no were Republicans, not Democrats. A day later, on Wednesday, the Senate passed the bill, and it passed 87 to 11. The only Democrat that opposed this was Senator Michael Bennet. He was the only one that opposed it. And then last night, President Biden signed this into law. He also signed this, and this is where things are getting a little bit interesting. President Biden signed this bill when he was in San Francisco for the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, okay, the APEC Summit. Now, the whole point of this, and the reason why I bring this up, is because today, President Biden is meeting with the Mexican president. And they're going to talk about border security. They're going to talk about additional trade. They're going to talk about a bunch of different things. And so what President Biden brings up and what we hear, it's going to dictate where we go in the future, especially when we have to get the government funded past January 19th and February 2nd. Because if you remember from the video I did on Tuesday, when I said that this bill passed, I told you that this was a laddered approach where certain things are going to run out of funding on January 19th. Other things will run out of funding 2 weeks later on February 2nd. Now, I bring all this up because this bill that President Biden signed, he signed it knowing that there was no money for Ukraine and no money for Israel. President Biden demanded $60 billion for Ukraine. You know how much money was in this bill for Ukraine? $0. He also asked for a bunch of money for Israel. Republicans came out, they passed a bill in the House of Representatives for $14.3 billion going to Israel. That bill went to the Senate and it was blocked. Democrats did not want that bill because that bill was tied to pulling money from the IRS. Here's the thing. The IRS has additional $70 billion in funding that they can use over 10 years that they are going to use to hire additional IRS agents to go after what they are calling tax cheats. However, from what we've learned based off of statements from people out of the IRS and from expert groups, they are saying that the IRS having more funding, it really doesn't go after the high-level tax cheats. It doesn't go after the billionaires and multimillionaires and large corporations because they have accounting teams, whole firms that do their taxes, that understand every single word. And finding an IRS agent that is not currently employed, that's going to come in and going to understand every single word and go after those supposed tax cheats, it's going to be almost impossible. So what we are hearing is that having additional $70 billion for the IRS over 10 years is actually going to increase the chances of audits for everyday people like you and I. So that's the thing. The Republican Party is trying to remove that funding so that everyday people are not getting taxed additional money because they are simply being audited because they don't know what they're doing. Now, with all this that's been going on, the fact that President Biden is, he signed the bill last night. According to experts, they say that now that this bill has been officially passed by all parties, it's on to the next step. Well, what is the next step? Well, here's the thing. Americans are demanding a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. Even there's groups of Democrats that are urging President Biden and Antony Blinken to support a ceasefire in Gaza because people continue to lose their lives. Well, the reason that this is such a big deal is because Hamas, according to many experts and according to multiple articles online right now and statements from multiple White House officials, Hamas has nowhere to go. Hamas is seriously stuck because of Iran coming out the other day and saying they would not physically support Hamas in this fight. They're not going to attack Israel. Well, they're saying that because of that betrayal, it leaves Hamas with nowhere to go. Well, this is what I've said before. Then this isn't based off me knowing much about war. It's about what experts have been saying for some time, is that if Hamas is pushing for a ceasefire and willing to give up certain hostages, there's a chance Hamas is understanding that Israel and the IDF is getting closer to their compounds, is finding out where they're at, okay? And they're making it difficult for Hamas to win this. According to the Israeli Prime Minister or Foreign Minister, he says that they are not going to stop until Hamas is beaten. So right now, what we're hearing, and this is something that is extremely important because we have seen people protest here in the United States. Just the other day on Wednesday, lawmakers had to evacuate from the Democratic National Convention after protesters were clashing with police. Police officers had to be called in. This is the Capitol Police. They had to be called in because protesters would not allow lawmakers to leave. They would not allow people to exit the building. And so the building was under lockdown. These are the things that we, and I've said this before, we can't allow to happen here on U.S. soil. But they are. And so this is why some are saying that, yes, we need to call for a ceasefire. It needs to happen. But at the same time, according to Israel, they cannot agree to a ceasefire because if they do, that's going to empower Hamas. And they don't want to do that at this time. Now, right now, according to multiple experts, they believe that we have very little time to agree to a ceasefire. That's one. We need to address other pressing issues, for instance, the southern border, and we need to do that because of the talks that are going to happen today. Because we know that this morning, President Biden is going to be meeting with the President of Mexico, and they will address, hopefully, border security. Now, I also want to read you a couple things as well from this article. It says Mexico is moving into focus today. It says Lopez Obrador has some of his country's most pressing issues on his agenda, including strengthening regional cooperation to combat corruption and boosting trade. But President Biden, he is supposed to address a couple other issues. One is the surging migration at the border. What are we going to do with this? Because we are seeing so many people making their way up to the U.S.-Mexico border to attempt to make their way in. And we also need to address the flow in drugs, such as fentanyl. Okay? It says down here, Lopez Obrador has said that the world has taken the wrong approach by focusing on people coming into the United States. He says the people don't abandon their towns because they want to, but rather out of necessity. I bring this up for multiple reasons. In the government funding bill, we have money that's set aside for other countries. For instance, Mexico. This money that is set aside, this money can be used for humanitarian aid, can be used to just give another country additional money so that they can, hopefully, keep their citizens happy and in that country, and they don't have to flee to another one. There was no money in this bill for Ukraine. There's no money in this for Israel. There's no money for Gaza. There was no money in this bill. Okay? With that said, according to multiple reports, there is still talks of President Biden allowing Palestinians into the United States. Once they can get out of Gaza, then there is a chance they can come into the United States. Okay? Also, people here in the United States that are from Gaza, they can stay for a little bit. The reason why I bring this up is because many are questioning whether or not this is the right move. Now, I'd be curious what your thoughts are. Do you think this is the right move? Do you think this should be blocked? What should happen? But again, all this is coming because this bill was signed. This is a major bill. But what happens after this bill and leading up to the next bill, which again has to be passed by January 19th and February 2nd. Those are two major dates. So mark those dates on your calendar because that is going to be extremely important because we do know lawmakers are going to go on recess. They're going to go on recess for Thanksgiving, and which some already have, and they're going to be on a recess over Christmas break. So they're going to be off for quite a while over the next month. Keep that in mind because after that, we'll have about 14, 15 days to get a deal done before January 19th. So just wanted to fill you in on what's happening at this time. Good news is this bill is passed. The government will be funded. People will not be furloughed. Agencies will remain open for the time being. But what happens on January 20th? Do we have a deal or do we not? Well, as we get more information, I promise I'll fill you in on all the latest news and updates, but that is what we know as of right now. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.